Hi, my name's Stephen Duckett. I'm a member of the Religion and Social Policy Network at the University of Divinity. My background is in health policy, but I've also been heavily involved in the non-government sector, including a time as chair of the Brotherhood of Tolerance. I just stress that this paper does not purport to be the views of the Brotherhood. This paper arose from my interest in what I see happening as the secularisation in the faith-based social sector in Australia. And it was part of a special issue of a journal the journal's called Theology, which was looking at relevant aspects. So I began by being interested in what was it that led to the transformation of faith-based agencies to become more secular. And I think there are a number of things that have happened over the decades. This is not an issue for the last year or so. The first is about professionalisation of the social sector. So maybe 40 or so years ago, we saw a move in faith-based agencies away from priests and religious being the leaders of the organisation without any formal training in social welfare provision. And so we began to see social work, people with social work training, and subsequently people with business training. And to some extent, this change in the leadership also began to be associated with a change in the ethos. The second thing, of course, is the secularisation of society and a multicultural society. Many of the faith-based agencies, let's talk about the Christian faith-based agencies, obviously today deal with people from all faiths or none. That is, you have significant Muslim refugees, we have other faith-based refugee or people with faith as refugees, and the faith-based agencies have to deal with these people because that is the clientele, that is the need. Similarly, the staff are no longer all Christian, they're Muslim, they're Buddhist, they're nothing, and so on. So it's a combination of things are changing the way the organisations work and changing their leadership. Then there is another factor in the environment, which was again over the last 40 years or so, is the development of what has sometimes been called the contract state. Mark Considine, or was it John Alford at the University of Melbourne called it that. The pressure from neoliberalism that everything can be contracted. You can describe everything perfectly, and we can write a contract. We no longer need to have state provision, and we can hold people accountable through a contract. This, of course, presupposes that a contract can be written. There's been a couple of Nobel Prize winners winning prizes in economics, which suggests that not every product can be well defined in a contract. In economics, this is referred to as incomplete contracts. That is, you can't actually measure quality, for example. And so there has been a loss by this naive view that everything can be written in a contract. But it still means there's huge opportunities for faith-based organisations to actually seek contracts from the state. So these combined factors in the environment and within the organisations themselves have led to an implicit or explicit secularisation in name or style. Sometimes the original Christian-based names of the organisations, for example, have been replaced by blander names, which you can't discern precisely what the organisation is about or where its history is. Importantly, the alternate path is to recognise that this contract state requires the organisation to be business-like, but it still can be faith-based, and you can see it in the way the organisation works. So what then are the two paths? Well, the first is the sort of secularisation path, the faith-based organisation does the work as a contractor and sees itself as a contractor, only does what it is paid for. And because of often the way the contracts are written, preclude the organisation from doing any advocacy, preclude the organisation from speaking out on behalf of its clients. And it has what I'd call an ameliorative mindset. This term comes from a good little book by Laura Stevers, which looks at, in a sense, a hierarchy, but 4 different sorts of responses to homelessness. It's an American book. The first stage is just amelioration, patching up, providing food or whatever. And as you progress to more sophisticated responses, they are about changing the conditions which lead to homelessness. So what I'm arguing is the secularisation approach, which is all about responding to the contract, is more likely to be ameliorative than disruptive. Now, this travels a bit into economics. The apparent objective function, that is, what is the organisation trying to achieve? Well, it may be trying to achieve a good business bottom line, that is, maximising the earnings before income tax, depreciation and amortisation, subject to legal, environmental, social, governance constraints. So it's all about the bottom line. Now, the alternative path is one which continues with social advocacy, but also works as a contractor. That is, it sees its goal as changing society. It sees its goal as being about not only patching up, not only the Band-Aid, but looking at the fundamental causes of, for example, homelessness. The objective function is slightly different. It's about maximising the public or social good, subject to financial adequacy, legal constraints, and so on. So what it is trying to do is different. So if you think about the boards of these organisations, in a for-profit organisation, simplistically, and this is not quite true, it's all about a single bottom line, easily measurable and so on, whereas a not-for-profit corporation has multiple objectives which need to be traded off. But obviously, it can only survive if it actually has the financial wherewithal to do so. So it's a quite different mindset. And to some extent, these are caricatures, but what I'm arguing is that the more the right-hand path here is business-like, but the faith-based can be seen and is acknowledged and owned. Now, I've mentioned here the objective function is linked to the second commandment about loving your neighbour as yourself. And basically, it is about putting into practice some of the commissions, some of the requirements, some of the expectations of the Bible, in particular the New Testament here, that I'm referring to. Now, what I'm also arguing is that if the faith-based basis is acknowledged, then you can begin to think about local action and involvement, say, for example, with the parish communities of that faith. And again, it is about transforming, it's about giving opportunities to people in those faith-based organisations, in parishes and the like, to continue with commitment to change. Now, I talked about the neoliberal state being 40 or so years old. There are increasingly challenges to this very idea that the way we have to go is the contract state, neoliberalism, and it's increasingly in disrepute associated with the challenges to seeing everything in society as in terms of monetary transactions, seeing policy as about those sorts of things. And Mariana Mazzucato has written well about these issues, about the policy should be about purpose and directionality. That is, we should be thinking about where we want to be, how we're going to get there, and the society that we want to live in, which is not about transactional a transactional world. And this is a good summary of her thinking in the Journal of Economic Policy Reform. So the path of secularisation has started. The path is about either explicitly or implicitly reducing the emphasis on the origins of the organisation, of its continuing commitment, and so on. And the question I raise here, is this reversible? I think it is. There's one management theorist, Edgar Schein, who a long time ago said the only thing of real importance that leaders do is create and manage culture. So it is part of the job of the leaders of an organisation, the board, the CEO, the next level down, to actually start to talk about the culture that we want to pursue, and start to reverse, I think, some of the distressing trends of secularisation. What are the things that might facilitate a business-like approach? Part of it is the role of the central part of the church. Does the church itself, in a faith-based world, acknowledge and valorise its role in these faith-based social welfare agencies? What about divinity schools? Are they training people to be leaders in these sorts of organisations? Are they equipping them for a new sort of role in these? So I guess I would conclude by saying that I'm pretty optimistic. I think we need to understand the challenges of what's happening, what is causing some of the secularisation in these faith-based social sector provision agencies. We need to step back and say, is this inevitable? Can we challenge this trend, which comes from a neoliberal mindset, which says we are just transactional organisations, we are just contractors? And I think we should be saying there is something strong, there is something good in being faith-based. Even in a secular society, we have something to offer. We have a grounding which can challenge the conventional wisdom, and we should be proud of it and own it. And we should be moving forward in all of these spaces, confident that we can still work in a multicultural society. We recognise that our staff, the clients and so on are multicultural, but we have something to offer. As I said right at the beginning, this is based on an article published last year in the journal Theology. Thank you very much.